I know you always acted with Emily's best interests at heart. And mine when I was alive. You were a good husband. And a good father. Nobody's perfect.
Ah, memories. My wife and I used to come to this place to mess about, before we were actually husband and wife, of course. Her parents were a bit on the religious side, and, well, I'm not sure my parents would have appreciated us getting up to mischief in their house either. It wasn't glamorous, but at least we knew we could be alone here. There was that one time, of course, when we were interrupted by the squatter. The poor old guy seemed a bit embarrassed by his discovery, truth be told. We quickly finished up our business and respectfully departed. During future visits, we made a point of keeping to the other end of the building, just in case. Eventually, the place was condemned and torn down. It was no great skin off our knees, given that we'd already moved on, but I always wondered about that homeless man. I certainly hope he wasn't inside the building on the demolition day. He'd be long gone by now, either way. Ah, that's right. I'd completely forgotten that this was where we found Kiri, named him, and jokingly decided to keep him should we ever have a child together. Careful what you wish for. There was one resounding consequence to the breakup with the other teacher. Shortly afterwards, my drinking started to spiral out of control. Perhaps it shouldn't have come as a surprise. My father had been something of a drinker when I was young, though he did manage to reduce his intake by the time I left home, thanks to the numerous threats of divorce from my mother. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father partially conquered his alcoholism to keep a woman in his life, while losing 2 women in my own only drew me closer to the demon drink. I never hit Emily. Not before the drink and not after. It just didn't affect me that way. Alcohol didn't make me violent, it made me negligent. Which isn't to say that I wasn't known for my occasional bouts of verbal aggression. That much I can't deny, and I probably raised my voice to Emily more often than I should have. I certainly recall at least one occasion when I reduced her to tears, and there were probably other occasions that I simply can't remember. But I never hurt her physically. That much I'm certain of. That just wasn't who I was or who I am today. I might be a weak man, but I'm not a total coward. At first, my work wasn't affected, at least not noticeably. As the months progressed, however, I found myself substituting the water in my plastic bottle for vodka. Only sometimes, on especially hard days, and only a partially full bottle. No one ever knew, of course, though my work performance was questioned on one or two occasions. That said, my job was never in threat, at least for the first year or so. Then came the day of a certain small incident, and, well... I wasn't violent towards the boy. Again, that just wasn't my style, sober or otherwise. But I definitely raised my voice at him and demanded that he leave my classroom and never darken my doorstep again. I might have even sworn at him. The official report certainly claims that I did. What can I say? His disruptive behavior was difficult enough to tolerate, even when I was in a fitter state to endure such nonsense. But things were starting to deteriorate in my life generally, to the point where Emily's grandparents were starting to intervene a little, and I guess I took my frustrations out on him rather than her. There's no denying that boy deserved my wrath more than my daughter. I was put on suspension since I hardly had a history of these things. I'd been a good worker up to that point, I honestly had. Go sort yourself out, they said. I had every intention of doing just that.
Darling, you can't keep blaming yourself for what happened. Not to me, and no.
The path to recovery is never an easy one, and I wasn't convinced that cold turkey was my answer. It just sounded too convenient to me and seemed a surefire way to fall straight back off the wagon. I suspected that slowly weaning myself off the drink would reap more permanent rewards, and immediately set about reducing my intake. A fortnight later, it was still a daily habit, but at least that habit had shifted mostly to nights. After talking Emily's grandparents around, convincing them this was the first step on my road to recovery, I soon organised a trip to one of our favourite beaches, a retreat we'd been to a couple of times before. It would be a week's trip during her school holidays, away from the stresses of both our lives. Emily was happy, especially after I explained to her that this was Daddy's chance to get better. At the very least, that was the plan. I always tried to make holidays a thing in our little family unit, for the short time such a unit existed. I was more of a summery person, while my wife adored the snow. Perhaps it was her Russian roots. Our daughter was happy almost anywhere and everywhere, but there's no denying she felt the cold more than any of us. Daddy, Kiri's shivering. He needs more fire. We all knew, of course, that she was referring to herself and not the rabbit, but if that was her way of appearing courageous, we were willing to go along with it. I rugged up and left the two ladies in the log cabin in search of wood to feed the fireplace. 6 years. That's all the time we had together. All three of us. All the time that Emily had to get to know her mother. "Daddy, when will Mummy be coming home?" she asked, the day after Cassandra died. I opened my mouth to answer, but all that came from my throat was an impotent choking sound. Tears were quick to follow. Emily, brave little soul that she was, did her best to console me. In the end, it was a children's book that helped Emily to fully comprehend what had happened to her mother. So the mummy deer got sick and there was nothing the other deers could do to help her. That's right, sweetie. We all have to pass on sooner or later. Your mother's time just came sooner than we expected. It was in that moment that I understood why families bought pets with short life expectancies, like goldfish and guinea pigs. Emily had little concept of death up until that point. Ah, that should be enough wood for now. Time to head back to the cabin. I'm sure those two must be freezing by now. I could happily bear to get a bit warmer myself. Beaches are certainly more my speed, I'd say. Things went swimmingly for the first few days of the beachside trip, no bad puns intended, and Emily was enjoying every minute of it. Sometimes I worried that I may have created a slight loner of a kid, given how happy she was to play by herself, how proficient she was at finding her own entertainment. This isn't to say that there weren't other children at the retreat with whom she was willing to briefly associate, but she didn't seem overly fussed if their parents had to take them home that same evening. She was happy either way. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, given that she was an only child, and that she was no stranger to the idea that people might temporarily inhabit her life, only to depart shortly afterward. Perhaps I'd raised her a little too well in that department. In the meantime, I was having my own version of a good time. Freed from the shackles of a more polite existence, I found little reason not to drink the days away, and the nights even more so. I know that wasn't the plan, but anyway. I met some new friends, and even made the acquaintance of a very lovely, very single woman 5 years my junior. A woman so charming that even Emily seemed to take a slight shine to her. Things were definitely looking up. Then came the day of the tragedy. In the early evening, 2 days after meeting the woman, I was enjoying her company and that of some fellow adults, while my daughter enjoyed the water mere meters away from us. I say mere meters, but she must have started to drift further out without my noticing. A fact hardly surprising, given that my advanced state of inebriation limited my focus to one subject at a time, at best. And given that the woman was the greater novelty of the moment, she was the one stealing the bulk of my attention at the time. This attention was quickly divided, however, when I heard my daughter scream. It's strange the sudden clarity one can experience, the moment one realizes that something they love is in danger. I leapt to my feet and caused all manner of calamity as I scrambled to free myself from the tiny maze of tables and chairs that surrounded us. Somewhere behind me, another man from our entourage was rushing to join me, but I was quicker to reach the waterside and wade frantically in, shouting my daughter's name. I couldn't actually see her at first, then glimpses only of her hands and arms as they flailed above the water. All thoughts of my own current capacity to swim were tossed aside, and I launched myself into the ocean, fingers first. I'm not even sure if I was swimming in the correct direction the whole time, but my body knew it had to press on, irrespective. Something inside my burning brain told me that as long as I pushed myself forward, I could aid my daughter. By the mere fact of willing myself to be her savior, that was what I would somehow become. Her body was never found. Mine somehow made its way back to the beach before collapsing, face down, so I'm told, into unconsciousness. I cannot say with any confidence whether I could have saved Emily, sober or not, but I blame the drink nonetheless, and most of all I blame myself. Who am I kidding? A bottle can't be blamed for its actions any more than a rifle can be. It was my weakness, my fault, and my fault alone that I became a man so wretched that he failed to notice his own daughter struggling with the evening tide. My last-minute delusions of heroism count for nothing. I simply was not there for my only child when she needed me the most. Can I tell myself I was a good father? No, but I did try, more than my own father ever did. That said, the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree, and I can't deny the blood that runs through my veins. But I've punished myself plenty, and I've improved my ways. I don't drink anymore, and every year I make this pilgrimage to prove this fact to my daughter. I've another dozen unopened bottles where that came from, so my penance is far from over. I'm slowly learning to forgive myself, and I can only ask you, Emily, to forgive me also. You were the most vivid reminder I had left of your mother, and now that you're both gone, well, let's just say that I keep to myself these days. It's better that way. All that I can do is be the best teacher that I can and give other people's children the best opportunities that life has to offer them. I'm so sorry I couldn't do that for you. Farewell, my little mermaid. Sleep peacefully. Daddy loves you.